Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the town of Breckenridge, State of the Town. I'm Eric Mamula. I am your mayor. With me tonight, Dick Carlton, Jeffrey Bergeron, Aaron Giello, Wendy Wolf, Gary Gallagher, and Kelly Owens, and Rick Holman for the questions that we don't know how to answer. And scattered through the audience this evening are some of our staff, so that when we get stumped, they can either look the other way or feed us the answer. So, or shake their heads like, why don't you listen? We are going to review some of the major things we did in 2019 with a bit of a look ahead for 2020. We will each do a little presentation on one of the things that's sort of most dear to us, although everything we do is dear to all of us, honestly. This is a outstanding, hardworking, very thoughtful council that this town has. And then at the end, we'll do a big question and answer. The way we're going to do questions tonight, we're going to try this app that we got from Iowa Caucus Gang. This is, so it's sli.do, and if you go on there with your phone, put the event code U405 and join the meeting, and then you can send questions directly to Haley. We know some people don't like to stand up in public, and this sort of levels the playing field so that if you got some stuff to ask, you can ask away. So tonight we begin with Gary Gallagher, and Gary's going to talk to us about probably one of the most important things that we deal with, and that is water. So, Mr. Gallagher.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Back in 2014, the town actually got very, very serious about building a second water plant in order that we would have redundancy to back up our 1970s built Gary water plant out at the Tarn, as well as to be sure that when we had full build out in the upper blue, that we had sufficient water capacity to handle the upper blue. And also, could we come up with a project that would ultimately allow more water to stay in the river for a longer length of time. And I think with this particular project, that was mission accomplished. We've accomplished those three primary goals. This project is going to be completed midsummer of this year. It's a $58 million project. It's the largest capital project the town has done to date. We'll hear something later that will obviously probably exceed that, but to date, that is the largest project that the town has done. When it is completed, it will provide 4.5 million gallons per day. That will be its capacity. It's interesting to note that there was a day this past year in 2019, according to Public Works Department, that we had our heaviest usage of water, which was 4.2 million gallons in one particular day this past summer in 2019. It was sort of like a record. So again, this project is coming in on schedule and within the budget. So it's been a terrifically run project by our Public Works Department and all the folks that have been part of that. No sooner do we finish one big project on water, we move to a second large water project, and that's the Tarn Dam up at the existing Gary water treatment facility. That earthen dam was built in 1965. The town took ownership and operation of it in 1970. Has worked quite well for so many years, but in the last couple of years, we've started noticing that the dam is starting to fail. There's some failures in a couple different areas, but the primary one is that there is leakage under the two existing spillways. And so the main aspect of this new project will be to remove those two existing spillways and to replace it with a single state-of-the-art spillway that should last 50 to 75 years, according to the engineers, and possibly longer, depending upon a variety of different factors. That dam currently is considered a high hazard dam. It's one of the 429 high hazard dams as rated by the state engineer from Colorado who focuses on dams. And high hazard doesn't mean imminent failure, but what it means is it's really time to get serious, take a look at it, and get a plan of action and get moving. because the consequences of a dam breaching would be absolutely destructive and catastrophic to this community. Good example, when we have a heavy water flow year in the spring, generally, say 300 to 400 cubic feet per second, people don't get too concerned in town, but when we start going 400 to 500 cubic feet per second, our Public Works and Water Department basically starts stationing personnel at that dam, sometimes 24/7, to keep an eye on it, to ensure that there's not an emergency. It's getting very, very close to causing some sphincters to basically tighten up a little bit, okay? A hydrologist.
Makes it waterproof.
It should have been Jeffrey's comment. I usually don't make those kind of comments. But it's interesting that we've had hydrologist engineers looking, and they've indicated that if that dam were to breach, within 10 minutes, that cubic feet per second, we're concerned when it gets to 400 to 500, would be 30,000 cubic feet per second below the dam, coursing its way right through Breckenridge all the way to the Dillon Reservoir. So obviously, the time is now to get moving on that. So the project is going to begin this May. It's going to require 3 summers, because we can only do the work during the summer period, generally from May to September for 2020, 2021, and 2022. It's approximately a $20 million project, $20 to $22 million. We received a $10 million grant from FEMA. Vail is under, we have a legal contract with Vail. They have to provide 12.5% of the total cost for the dam. And the balance would most likely be made up of low-interest water loans that are available from the Colorado Conservation Water Board. So that's how it would be financed. And unfortunately, in order to do the work, it will require in each of the 3 summers a lowering of the water level in the reservoir, and in each of those 3 summer periods, a period of time where the reservoir will be drained entirely. What that will do will cause impact on those residential wells that are in close proximity to the reservoir. And so the town has already begun, through our Public Works Department and other engineers, has begun the assessment of just who's likely to be impacted, to what extent, and beginning to develop measures within reason to be able to address those issues so that we can, in effect, have good neighbor policy. We don't want to leave people stranded, even though there's probably no legal liability on something like this, but that's not the position of the road that we're going to be going down. So a lot of work still to remain in terms of figuring out what the mitigation is for those that are being impacted, but weather permitting, we hope to get started this May 2020, be completed late summer, early fall of 2022. That's it.
Thank you, Gary. I, of course, forgot something in my opening remarks, and that is
let's go back.
the census. This is an important slide. Census is coming up. It is important for the town that as town citizens, you're all counted. This, in particular, things like federal dollars that we get for grants and electric buses and stuff come from these kind of numbers, so please make sure you go online, fill out the census when the card comes, and yeah, there's some census information in the back when you leave if you're interested, and Haley knows all about it too, so you can ask her. Okay, we move on to childcare with Kelly.
All right. I was going to make a diaper joke, but to segue from Gary.
From the
but
sphincter
since
joke?
Yeah. Since you hijacked it with the census, I'll just
Sorry.
stay on
Sorry,
track.
sorry.
So in 2019, we continued our commitment to children and quality childcare in the town. Of course, that is a big benefit to a lot of employees and residents living here. At the end of 2019, we had about $2.1 million left in the fund that we call the Childcare Fund. And last year, in 2019, we spent about $600,000. And the way that money works is that it goes directly to the different child care facilities on behalf of the families. So a family qualifies for assistance, and we think that they shouldn't be cost burdened, above about 13% of what they make, and so the town has chosen to subsidize those families that are paying more than that. Last year, we actually had a big benefit. In the past, we've spent about $850,000, but because of Summit Pre-K, which the 1A fund or Strong Futures money that we passed last year, our fund in the town of Breckenridge didn't have to spend as much money. So that will help the child care fund stay, being able to help these families through 2023. We reach about 78 families with that fund, which translates to about 105 kids. So it's a lot of people. I think really exciting number is that 46% of those people that we're reaching have been here for over 10 years. So we're reaching a bunch of longtime locals and people who have been giving back to this community for a long time. About 20% of the people we reach have been here for 5 to 10 years. So about 65% of those people that we're reaching with the Child Care Fund have been here over 5 years, which I think is, a great metric for that fund. Also, we reach about 76 different businesses. So those are employees that are getting to work every day and having great care for their kids, and the businesses are also benefiting. We also invest directly in the teachers. So we give a subsidy to full-time teachers of about $150,000. That's for all the centers, and that's divided up, so it's not a ton of money, but it definitely helps those teachers be able to make some expenses. A lot of the teachers that we have, I'm on the board at Little Red, and a lot of those teachers work 2 jobs to make it work, as we know is not a uncommon thing here. So we're happy to be able to help. We also had a grant, we awarded a grant to the Carriage House that let them do a capital improvement that allows for 8 more spots there, which isn't a ton when you have 250 people or kids on the waiting list, but it definitely helps. Every little bit helps. We also did a capital reserve study this year to better understand for each facility what might be coming down the pipeline and what kind of expenses. So we definitely want to have a good understanding of how these facilities are run, and that we're going to be able to provide high quality health care to all these families and kids. So for 2020, right now we're doing a center assessment. Well, the RFP is out. I guess we're going to be starting the center assessment. And what we're looking at is, can we reconfigure? Can we add on? Do we need a new child care facility? What's the best way? How can we stretch our money, make it go the furthest to reach as many families as we can? That assessment will start, I believe, in April. And then another thing that we are looking at, which we talked about just at Tuesday's meeting, is long-term funding of the Child Care Fund. So right now, like I said, it's projected to run out of money about 2023, despite money that we do put in from the marijuana tax. We get about $375,000 a year from that, but since we spend more than that, it is projected to run out. We're looking at long-term funding, potentially at this point. I guess what staff is going to be researching is if we could do some sort of an income tax or a tax on short-term rental income. So that's something that we're exploring in the future, and we think that that's a pretty well-suited area, since a lot of, we need employees in order to either service those homes, or we have more people coming into town, and so restaurants are busier, retail's busier. So we think that that's a pretty suitable area for analyzing at this time. So that's childcare.
Thank you, Kelly. And we go to housing with Dick.
Thanks. I'm going to speak to workforce housing down the same lines as Kelly, speaking for our workforce. And I really want to specifically speak to a new program we're rolling out called Housing Helps that we're really excited about. But I want to start with a little context. We currently have about 1,000 deed-restricted workforce housing units in the Upper Blue Valley. In the last 4 years, the town of Breckenridge has developed 171 new units. We've done an additional 90 new units in public-private projects. And we currently have approximately 100 additional new units in different stages of work. One of those projects, which is the McCain property, which I'll give you a little more detail on that in a bit. That's the good part. The challenging part is we think we need about 1,000 more units to accommodate our workforce in the next 3 years. And that's really challenging because, you know, we really don't have the land to build 1,000 more units. We certainly don't have the budget to build 1,000 more units. And I'm not sure the Valley can handle the impacts of 1,000 more units. So we're looking at alternative options. We're not going to stop new projects in workforce housing, but we're certainly not going to go at that pace. So we've been doing buy downs for some time. We've ramped that program up a little. What that involves is we'll identify a unit that is very well suited for workforce housing. We'll buy the unit, we'll place a deed restriction on it, and then we'll turn around and resell the unit at a little lesser price than what we bought. And that we've been successful with. I think we've done 11 buy downs in 2019. But the one we're really excited about going forward is Housing Helps. We've modeled this after the Indeed program in Vail. And the way Housing Helps works is we take applications from owners or sellers or buyers of units, and we assess their how well suited they are for our employee housing inventory. And then we will offer the owner of the property between 10 and 15% in cash of the fair market value of that unit. And this can be very helpful for the owners of those units for unexpected maintenance projects or an HOA special assessment, or if they just need some cash. What we ask for in exchange for the money is a deed restriction. And these deed restrictions, we call them our workforce housing deed restriction light. And what it means is what the deed restriction involves is it requires the occupants of the unit, whether it's a renter or the owner, to work in Summit County at least 30 hours a week. Okay, so it doesn't have to be occupied by an owner. It can be a renter or an owner. And this really helps provide more employee housing without building additional new units. It's far less risky. It's far less money. It really helps make more units accessible. It's a good way for first-time buyers to be able to find the down payment money. It has nothing. The deed restriction is in perpetuity, and it has no effect on appreciation. So when the owner decides to sell the unit, they sell at whatever the market will bear, and the deed restriction goes with the sale. Okay, we've rolled this project out kind of slowly over the last year. We did that intentionally while we worked out the details with lenders and with the title companies and the real estate community. We really did it through working with the real estate community and word of mouth. And we've still gotten 19 applications in the last year. And interestingly, of the 19, the majority of them are unincorporated Summit County. We're still talking just the Upper Blue Basin, which is all we're interested in really having this project work in. So we've approached the county and have successfully negotiated with them where they're committed to split the investment. And they've allocated $1 million in their budget for 2020 for Housing Helps. We have also allocated $1 million. Now, of the county's $1 million, they're thinking they're going to probably earmark about 40% of that for the Upper Blue Basin, and then the rest for the rest of the county. So we're really excited about this program. Vail, in 18 months, Vail was able to deed restrict 121 units. So it's been quite successful over there. And like I say, it's really exciting for us. It helps preserve our existing neighborhoods. You know, these units won't go into the short-term rental pool and will be for housing. So, so this is really exciting. I said I would talk in a little more detail about the McCain property. We've got some property kind of behind the BBC or behind the new water plant, and we've done a public-private relationship and put together, and we are in the process of planning for 80 units out there, and these are for rent units. And we've been successful in putting this deal together so that they're very low AMIs for these, meaning that 62 of the 80 units will be for families with lower than $42,000 annual income. So that really helps in an area that we are really short of housing. So that project is moving forward, and we're very excited about that as well. You know, we have a strong crew, a strong group on staff that is very dedicated and really taking a leadership role in the state in workforce housing. And I know everyone up here is very supportive of it as well. So it's you know, we're working hard on it. We're nicking away at it. Not sure we're going to solve the 1,000, but you know, it's something we take very seriously.
Thank you, Dick. Now Aaron will talk about events and tourism.
All right. Hi, everyone. So, events. We have a committee. Some of you may not know that we have an events committee that meets once a month, and it's comprised of stakeholders in the community that have to do with events. For instance, the town's there, the Breckenridge Tourism Office is there, Beaver Run, Vail Resorts. We all come together to talk about events and what's best for the town. So, I have a few major topics to talk about. First, the parking structure as that's being built, and Eric will talk about that a little bit more, that will clearly displace a lot of parking spots around town. Now, some events happen, as we know, on parking lots. And so as we've gone through the events that are about to happen, we talk about, well, can we move an event? Can an event kind of take shape in a different form, whatnot? So we've been addressing that as we've been going along. A big event is snow sculptures. I hope you all know what snow sculptures is, because the rest of what I'm about to say is not going to make very much sense if you don't. So for snow sculptures next year, it is not going away. We're going to do it differently. We're going to do a larger piece called World Peace. And it's going to be a little bit different, where competitors from the past, some of the winners, are going to come back from around the world, and they're going to create this piece together that's called World Peace. And it won't displace as many cars. It won't be as large of an event, and we're looking at different options to have some kind of theme around town as well, possibly. But that's what's going to happen in 2021. That's the only change. So in the future, game on as business as usual. So we'll do snow sculptures as we've done before. That event isn't going away. We've heard rumors that it could be. Please tell everybody it's not going away. We're just doing something different for 2021. Something else that the events committee is working on is this new events matrix. So the BTO really only puts on a handful of events. There are other independent events that happen, as everybody knows, throughout town, throughout the year. And we're looking at measuring all of these events, specifically to start the BTO events, but then going out into the BCA events and other independent events. We're using 3 objectives to measure these events: branding and media, building business, and community goodwill. Now, if we're putting on an event that doesn't check any of those boxes, we'll be taking a look and restructuring it or moving it or doing something different so that it does check at least one of those boxes. For instance, snow sculptures is a good branding and media event. And then something else that we're doing is we're measuring those results as they pertain to the intended event goal. So we'll be measuring how much media and branding the snow sculptures will be getting, as an example. Something else that we've done, along with the BTO, over the last couple years was hire a consulting company to create a destination management plan. And in October of this past year, for the 2020 budget, we voted to embrace these goals that make up the destination management plan. There are 4 goals, and it's how we measure as a council everything that we do. And it also drives what the BTO does. And so there are 4 major goals, and there's these sub-goals underneath them. I'm not going to go through everything. You'll go to sleep. The first goal is deliver balanced year-round economy by 2024. And so that's ensuring long-term economic viability. And one of the sub-goals is filling in need periods. And one of the ways that we do that is through events. For instance, January used to be slow. We brought in the snow sculptures, and now it's not. So that's one of the things, one of the ways that we meet goal number 1. Goal number 2 is elevate and fiercely protect Breckenridge authentic character and brand, and that includes our hometown feel and friendly atmosphere. So one of those sub-goals is develop more robust peak day management strategy. So that's when you have an event, like snow sculptures, where we had it originally because there was a slump. Now it gets really busy, right? Last year, it was the busiest weekend of the year. This year, we were able to manage it a little bit better. And that was due to the work with BTO and the partnership with the town. And we were able to put in some strategies so that that peak time was not as crazy for everybody. It wasn't gridlock. It wasn't the safety concern that it was in previous years. Goal number 3 is more boots and bikes, less cars. It should be fewer cars. I lost that battle. But that's more pedestrian access, reducing traffic, that sort of thing. And so what the BTO does with that is really try to educate our visitors before they come. There's a new campaign. You might have seen the Yeti. Brett, what is the Yeti called? What is it called? Teddy the Yeti. Yes. Yes. So, and if you don't know what it is, if you're a visitor, you would, through social media and the website and all that good stuff. So goal number 4 is establish Breckenridge at the leading edge in mountain environment stewardship and sustainable practices. And so that also, sorry everybody on Facebook. So that goes along with, again, that messaging from GoBrec. And then one of the sub-goals is that all major events are zero waste by 2024. And so this year, our new director of events came on like the week before Oktoberfest, but so unfortunately, so Oktoberfest saw a 23% diversion rate, but we're measuring it, and that's an improvement. And so the goal is that with all BTO events, they all have a 100% diversion rate, which is pretty great for our events. Something else through the events committee and through the SEPA process, which is the way that you apply to have an event in the town of Breckenridge, you can put in what kind of sustainability efforts you'll be having at your event. And we're working on how to measure that and to make sure that not just the BTO events are sustainable, but all of them. And that's all I got. That was probably more than 3 minutes.
That was awesome. Thanks, Erin. All right, we're going to have Wendy talk about sustainability for next. But before we start that, I just want to give a shout out to Beth Groundwater, who brought a bunch of people in the room on a consistent basis to drive us in the sustainability direction that we are full bore on now. And it just goes to show that somebody in the community that gets a bug,
Burn their
gets
saddle.
a burn in their saddle. I was trying to remember the phrase. Gets a burn in their saddle can really affect change at a local level like this. They showed up with cardboard signs and they pestered all of us every time they saw us anywhere. And eventually we said, all right. And now we are full on. It is working. And Beth, thank you so much for that. So Wendy, what are we doing?
Well, 8 years ago, I would have probably been the last council member that would have been assigned to talk about sustainability. I was a pure novice and had a lot to learn about it. And now 8 years later, I am a champion for being determined to leave this planet in a better place than we found it. And so everyone up here is so committed to this, and I'm happy to be the one to tell you about some of the things that we're doing. And with Beth, giving us the courage to commit to the goal of the town being 100% renewable by 2025, I'm happy to tell you a couple things that I think are just huge for the town. One is that the town has just secured a 3.6 megawatt agreement with Pivot Energy to come online in 2020. In that total agreement, the town will reach 100% renewable electricity for the amount of electricity that we generate in the year 2019. We will reach our goal. So that is huge. And then, Gary, who told you about our very nice water treatment plant, is also a huge user of energy. And so we've been very conscious of that, and we're working with a solar collective, an energy collective, which will help us power that new water treatment plant when it comes online in 2020. So we are going to offset all of it. So that's a huge commitment. And a year ago, we weren't sure how we would get from here to there, and now we see how we'll get from here to there. So that's the town's commitment by 2025, but on top of that is the community's commitment to be there by 2035. And that's a little further off, but it'll come sooner than we think, and we've been working on programs to help the community get there. We had a rebate program, and in this last year, we've had 31 systems of rooftop solar installed. And now our homeowners are starting to realize the opportunity, the offsets, the energy credits, the Excel partnerships that they can get, and more homes are taking advantage of this program, and I know more and more will continue to do so. So that's to our 100% renewable, but there's so much more that we can do and need to do to help with the climate change. Climate change, the clock is ticking on us, and there's just no way around that other than for all of us to start rowing together and do all the little things, the medium things, and a few big things to help us get that back under control. And one of the things that we're doing is really taking the EV stations for plugging in electric cars very seriously and putting more opportunity all around town. In this next year, the town will install 18 more ports. 8 of them will be at the rec center, 8 of them will be at the ice rink, and with the new parking structure, there's going to be, 16 or so? 20 at the new parking structure. So we will be prepared for your electric cars that are coming in the future. Another thing that we have been working on, but we need to step it up more, is our single-use plastic bags throughout town. We need to get to the point where we don't have any of them. We don't need them. We can use our reusable bags. We need to make those more available. We need to educate people on how, when they come to our town to shop, they should bring their bag. I see people throughout town bringing their bags and using them over and over again, and it's just time to do that. We'll also start working on the too many water bottles that we buy at City Market and trying to educate our visitors. We'll need more refill water stations. That's a little challenging in our climate because if they're outside, they can freeze, but there's ways we can work around that, and we're constantly working to find better ways to deal with that. And then electric buses. You've seen, I hope you've seen 2 of them around town this year. They're wonderful. If you haven't had a chance to ride one, I hope you will. They're quiet, they're efficient, they're cool. They do their job. Their batteries are running fine. So we're going to purchase 2 more in this next year. And then we hope we've been very successful at getting some grants to help us with this program, and that's enabled us to step it up. They are expensive, but it's very worthwhile. And then we have a program to replace some of our fleet, and we're hoping that in that replacement system we can also get electric buses, so it may be 2 to 3 on top of that. So we'll soon have a decent fleet of electric buses throughout town. Part of the motivation for having the courage to really champion sustainability and climate change, what came for this council in a transformative way when many of us had the opportunity to go to Park City this last October to go to a conference and really feel and see and be around other mountain towns who are also working on their sustainability programs and what they can do and what needs to be done to get us to hopefully net zero by 2030. And it was truly transformative. And so we decided, Eric stood up, turned around and asked the Breck team if we would be interested in hosting it here in Breckenridge this year. We all said, yeah, let's do it. And so we have the conference coming. It will be, we hope to be hosting 500. It'll be a combination of municipalities, their staffs, the ski areas, the public utilities, and some community that we will hope to invite and involve. And it will be September 29th through October 2nd. We will be using town facilities, the Riverwalk and some of the other town facilities, and we hope to make the conference itself net zero. We will eat plant-based food. We will not be producing name tags or lanyards or any of those things. This will truly be a conference that makes you think and act. So, you know, sustainability is truly on top of mind for this council and will continue to be.
Thank you, Wendy. All right, so in 1995,
Are we doing
huh?
It wasn't assigned to anybody.
It's,
Arts wasn't assigned.
we left that out. There's a slide about arts, in case you're. Sorry, Matt. The new director of our Breck Creative Arts is in the back giving me a stink eye. Raise your hand, Matt, everybody. If you get a chance, welcome Matt to town. We're really excited that he's here. He's got a depth of experience, so we're psyched to have him in the community. All right, I don't know what happened here. Anyway, in 1995, Jeffrey and his wife Ellen decided to start the open space program, which at the time went to the voters, and I cannot tell you, it's so funny looking back from today, it was such a fight. The fight about adding sales tax so we could buy open space caused a rift in the community between some of us that were in favor of it and some that thought that Breckenridge was just starting to grow. Why would we add sales tax? It's unbelievable looking back that anybody was against it at the time, because if we had to go to the voters today, I think it would probably have a 100% success rate. Since Jeffrey was the guy, he is constantly on the open space crew that makes all the decisions, and we can't really get him off, and he refuses to do anything else, so here's the comedic part of the show. Here's Jeffrey.
No pressure.
First of all, I'd like to thank Gary, Kelly, Dick, Aaron, and Wendy for being my opening act. Since its inception, Open Space has spent $22 million on land, preserving over 5,000 acres of open space, kept it from development, and also opened the door for a lot of recreational opportunities. It's been so successful that it has secured 2 grants from GOCO, over $700,000 for the 2 gifts to allow us to create a river park and a playground. The river park was recognized as the Colorado Lottery Starburst Award for 2019. Not sure what that is, but it sounds really good. Now, let's talk troll. Isaac Harstone returned. Now, here's the deal. Isaac Harstone was much like Vermont skiing. We were shocked about how popular it was. So it wasn't the Wellington, and it just inundated the neighborhood. So we relocated it to a place with a happier home by the ice rink, where we have parking and signage and a one-way trail. And on an average weekend, some weekends we'll get 1,600 visitors a day, sometimes 4,000 total visitors to see Isaac Harstone on any given weekend. So, I guess that's kind of art too. It's,
Oh, yeah, you get art too.
yeah, that's art. So that's kind of cool, and you got to check. It's just it's a destination for anyone that visits here, and I'm sure most of you have been here. So now coming up in 2020, the Town of Breckenridge and the BSR has a joint working group. There's always been rumblings. We should run the gondola more. We should run the gondola less. That goes over our very fragile Cucumber Gulch wetlands. And there's always been an argument, how much is enough, how much is too much, as far as the habitat and just the degradation of the gulch itself, mostly for wildlife and for avian population. Now, we've joined a Town of Breckenridge and BSR working group with biologists in place to kind of evaluate the issue. Now, Kelly Owens is serving on that. We're very lucky to have her because she's actually a biologist. And in this facility, faculty, as well as so many other things, she kind of protect the town's interest in that. So stay tuned for that. We'll find out. Now, we're also going to be doing, be aware this next summer there's going to be a joint forestry effort for the U.S. Forest Service and the town and county open space for wildfire mitigation, essentially tree cutting. A very small amount of it will be town and county open space, but a fair amount will be the Forest Service. And it's like making sausage. It's ugly but necessary if you like bacon or whatever. We're gonna have to cut down a lot of trees. I mean, if you've seen what happened in Paradise, we're gonna try to create some defensible space boundaries to make it easier for our wildfire fighters to protect our community. Now, one of the things that we're doing, we're gonna be offering to local landowners that run adjacent to open space property, giving them the opportunity to go on to public lands, Forest Service and town and county, probably more town and county, and trim trees with the town supervision. And we're not going to just give some schmo a chainsaw and let them go out there and cut. Usually what we're going to hopefully do, they're going to hire somebody to go to the open space in their property to secure it and make it safer. So that's going to be happening, and it's going to be facilitated by the town and the Forest Service. Now, also, the county has hired a forestry expert from the Colorado State Forest. She's going to be advising through all that, and that way, hopefully, we'll make our town a little bit safer. And all you had to do is see what happened in Paradise. I used to live in Paradise, California, in the summers, and it could happen anywhere. It could happen here, and this is something that hopefully will mitigate the risk and perhaps protect us. So. There you have it. That's the open space report.
Thank you, Jeffrey. All right. So for those of you who've been here for the last couple of years for the state of the town, you know that one of the things that we have been dealing with is negotiation with Vail Resorts over a piece of property to build a parking structure. We've had some starts and stops, and all this stems from a lift ticket tax that was instituted, voted on by the community, and is to go to transportation and parking. And as many of you know, we were successful in our negotiations. After 3 years of just slugging it out, I think the council stood its ground. We never talked poorly about anybody in the paper. We took the hits, and in the end, we got the deal that we really were looking for from the beginning. So we are leasing South Gondola for 50 years with 2 10-year options. So in effect, for the next 70 years, there'll be nothing on South Gondola except for the parking structure that we're going to start building in May. This is a front view of the structure. It's from the riverside. This is from the riverside. This is from the Park Avenue side next to First Bank would be on the right. This is from the gondola looking to the south. And that's all we have for pictures. So anyway, we start in May. This is a 16 to 18 month build. It will add 400 spaces to the property. So we'll have 950 spaces available on South Gondola. 250 of those are surface spaces. The deal that we struck with the Skiria is they, during the winter, will keep the revenue of the 550 cars that currently live on that property. The town will take the revenue for the 400 new cars, and then in the summer, the town will take all the revenue. It's a good working agreement, and that, of course, is after that. that revenue is after we pay expenses and plowing and striping and making sure that the structure stays whole. So we think it's a good agreement. It's a positive agreement for the town. The structure right now looks like it's going to be in the $50 million range. The first phase will be building the structure in that 16 to 18-month window. Immediately after that, there'll be a roundabout at Watson that we have already negotiated all the land around it, so there's no additional payment for that land for the roundabout. And then the third phase that we're hoping to combine with the second phase will be the phase along the river where we can fix the bike path that really right now is broken in between the core of town and out by the gondola. And just have a nice plaza area, direct linkage into town. As some of you may know, we bought the professional building next door so that we could own the two easements in between Town Hall and the professional building, and then the easement for the cars that the professional building owns down on the lot that's next to the sawmill lot that's all behind the gold pan, if that sort of situation is for you. So I'm not going to lie, this is going to be a terrible construction season. We're all just going to have to just not whine about it. The structure is really important. This is 400 cars that, everybody's talked about a structure in town. This is it. This is where the majority of people wanted it. We got the funding for it. We got the right plan. Looks like we're going to get CDOT approval. So we will be short 550 cars for the coming winter. So people will be parking at the airport. We've stopped building housing on the airport property so we could park more cars. We'll have a robust transportation plan to get our visitors and employees into town. And my fingers are crossed through this whole thing. So it'll be open by the following November. So that's the plan for that. We have other construction projects going on. The continuation of the fiber project will be going on. We're working on a transit master plan right now that hopefully will fix our transit issues at the transit center. That'll be a continuation after we build the parking structure, get the roundabout, finish the river, then hopefully we'll move on to transportation plan. And construction season is always everybody's favorite season, right? And fiber has been successful so far. It was the council's opinion that bringing a fiber project into the community as a backbone that runs up Riling Road and down Wellington, and then finding a partner, which is Allo, to then start hitting all the houses, was something that municipalities should do. It's one thing if you're in one of the communities that's an NFL city, you get your 5G right away. But little rural towns don't get the opportunity to have fiber, to have good connectivity. We're considered rural, and I think it was a big deal that the community voted to allow us to do this. It's been a difficult, but I think so far positive project, and it'll continue this year into most of the core of town, into the Weisshorn, and slowly we'll get fiber to everybody. It just, this stuff always takes longer than I would like, and that's just how life is, I guess. We're going to expand the network this summer and then hopefully get Wi-Fi into the core of town. The reason being, you know what it was like last weekend. You tried to make a phone call and you couldn't. Hopefully with Wi-Fi through the core, our guests, when they're looking on Google Maps, will go to the Wi-Fi and not use their data. And we'll be able to mitigate some of the impact of having 3G right now as we slowly crawl towards 4G and then 5G in our community. So those are some construction projects that's going on. This is sort of what we work on almost daily when we're up here or when we're out in the community talking to you about, what should we do. These are the big hits. We do a lot of other little stuff that we talk about constantly. Everybody has their own little things they love to do. We have a wonderful staff in this town, led by Rick and Shannon. They get so much work done. It's really been an honor of my life to be right here working with them doing this stuff. So here's our Q&A part of the festivities this evening. Go to sli.do And event code U405, I don't know if anybody's hit it yet, or do we have any questions?
Could you explain, what do you?
I can't explain because I
what
don't
are
know.
Are they typing into
Go to
this?
your browser.
What's
on
the
your
URL?
phone.
Into the browser.
To the browser where you would look up a website. Type this website. It's gonna prompt you to have a code, and then you can type your question in there.
Or in the meantime, does anybody have a question you'd like to answer the old-fashioned way with a raise of the hand? It's really for people that don't really like talking.
We'll just do it by.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Eric, I've got a question on the fiber that's coming in. It's not as intuitive to me as the garage or the water treatment plant or, some of the other things that we're investing in. What kind of metrics do we have in mind that will demonstrate the return on investment for that?
Gary, do you want this one, or you want me to?
I think the way we've looked at it, Ken, is we looked at this as basic infrastructure, no different than putting in a road or a bridge or anything else, water systems or whatever. I think if you're looking at it from a return on investment, you'd be highly disappointed. And quite frankly, the council made the decision to go into this not really looking at it from that point of view, but rather, we're a world-class city, we need world-class communications. And this is something that we need to do. We've heard enough gripes, not only from our local citizens, but our visitors. And we really felt at the end of the day, it was important for the town to take the lead. Yes, there'll be some return. It's not gonna be a market rate of return. It's not gonna be something that anybody would really invest in, doesn't make it an investment. It'll be a low rate of return, but I think the rate of return will be more qualitative than it will be quantitative. And that's the road that we've decided to move down, and that's how we're looking at it.
Okay, we're definitely hoping that we get some tie-in from some of the major mobile carriers as we move towards 5G also. Because this stuff's in the ground, that's a barrier that they don't have to jump over to get to that next phase of data that a lot of the larger communities be able to move to, so.
One of the things that I think is always interesting when these commercials talk about 5G right around the corner, the only 5G. What they don't tell you is that every 5G tower needs fiber. And so there isn't 5G in these cities unless there is a fiber connection to those towers that network the 5G. So, like Gary said, it's infrastructure that's going to be necessary for all future technologies that help us with communication, and it's just the way it is.
And
Okay.
If you look at history and you see what really propelled, if you go back to the beginning of this country, it was the canals in the east and the Midwest that drove the economics and drove commerce. And then you got into the mid to late 1800s, it was the railroad systems. If you weren't on the railroad line, your community died. If you happened to be on the railroad line, your community basically flourished. In the mid-50s, it was Eisenhower with the highway system. So I think the way I've looked at it, and I think some of the others have looked at it, is we're really looking at an infrastructure highway. And we want to make sure that there's exit ramps off and entry lanes onto that internet highway, as opposed to having the highway sort of go by your community and you have no way to get off or get on. And I think some of the metrics, Ken, that we would probably look at is things like reliability. What are your speeds up and down compared to what you've got today? The level of customer service, very competitive pricing on the internet, no more than you're paying Comcast for better speeds. The ability not to sign long-term contracts, but basically go month to month, and if you're not happy with the service, which makes this company, Allo, that we selected, having to work really hard to maintain excellent customer service. So I really think those are the kind of metrics that this council and senior staff were thinking about in terms of answering a question like you're raising, which is a great question. Not so much on the money side, it's really qualitative, looking at those kind of metrics and really deciding you don't want to be left behind. We got people out in the Wellington now, the parents come to us early on, and they're going, the kids get on to do their homework, and at 5:30, and next thing they know, they're whining to mom, hey, we just got knocked off. Because what Comcast put out there, as an example, wasn't broad enough to basically support the number of households. Now, we know the kids are gaming, but they're telling their parents they're doing their homework. But nevertheless, it's frustrating, and that's why we decided, hey, we believe this is the right thing to do. And Breckenridge has always been very progressive. We've always been a leader. We've always taken some risk. And this is what we're doing with respect to fiber. We truly believe in our heart of hearts, it really will pay off for the community, those of us who live here, as well as our guests and tourists that come in to visit with us.
Thanks,
And I'll
Thanks,
give you a
Ken.
real-time selling point. I don't have a TV, and I pay $85 for internet. That's all I have. And my upload or download speed is like 60. With this thing, I'll be paying about $60, and my upload speed will be 300. So like when I'm watching ice dancing in the Olympics, it won't buffer at all. It will just.
All right. Ken, thank you. Yeah.
forgot.
Haley, go ahead.
So,
So we got an actual question from the,
Really? It worked?
from
It
Slido.
must have been a young person.
I'm telling you, the 21st century. So we do have a couple questions about the parking structure.
Yep.
So I'll kind of segment them. If you can put the extra 400 parking spaces in context of kind of our current parking availability, does this really make a big impact? What is kind of that relational
So
aspect?
currently on North, South, and Gold Rush, there are 1,350 spaces. Huh? Oh, 1,560. 1,560 spaces. That's right. I was forgetting about Gold Rush. So that gives you a context of what we have right there in town. Adding 400, while it doesn't double it, but we think it adds a pretty good chunk of parking. And when you think about what people do when they drive into town, when they drive in and the lots are full, we end up getting a lot of circling through the community. So that was one of the reasons behind building a structure right in town. You drive into town, you park your car. Now you'll be able to park sheltered if you get to it, and then you can walk directly into the core, leave your car, leave your stuff, and walk into town and shop and eat and not get on the highway right away. So that's what we're hoping for. It would be great if we could do more, but it's still wildly expensive. We didn't want to build a structure that was too big and too out of character with the town. So this structure is 2 stories from Main Street looking at it and 3 stories on the backside. And we feel that fits. It takes up about half of the current parking lot. So next time you're out there, have a look. It's still a really big structure. But to add more than that, we'd have to take that entire lot, and we really just thought that would be just completely out of line with our community. So, it's a first step. We've talked about adding other structures, potentially the ice rink eventually, maybe out at the airport eventually. So, but this is what this council is going to do.
And another point to the number, if we did any more than that 400, then we would have to double lane Highway 9, which was something that we were not willing to do at this point.
Thank you. That is correct.
So there's some people doing math out there. Because one person says that Dudek built a structure for $60,000 a space, and they're wondering why ours is costing over $100,000. The structure is not 400 spaces. The structure is
750 spaces.
It's 400 new spaces. Keep in mind we had to replace the ones that we displaced.
Right.
Sitting on. So, and the 50 million is not just the hard construction cost. That's all in for everything that we're doing.
There's a lot of fluff in there, and in case, and it's still got to look nice.
This is in the center
We
of
got the
town. It
pedestrian
looks good.
plaza in it too.
We got a pedestrian plaza. Mike could build a concrete bunker up at the top on the ski area, and it fits perfectly up there. We're not doing that in town. You do a just concrete parking lot in town, and I might as well move. So.
And then one of the questions is about the number of electric vehicle spots. Do we have a number of?
Yeah, so we're starting with 20, but it's going to be wired through the structure to increase them as you go. The nice thing about a parking structure like this is you just run, once you have the main wiring through the building, you just run everything surface level. So it's not, you can add EV stations without adding a whole lot of cost, so.
And that's really smart because like as technologies are changing, then it doesn't really make sense to wire the entire area for our current technology.
And we're not even wiring it all. Some of it's just conduit. And
Right.
we're prepared to wire.
Prepared.
To Kelly's point, with the right wire, the right circuitry, et cetera, et cetera.
Sir?
Eric, yeah, thank you. Under the heading of sustainability and water, I wonder about, first of all, I wonder about the status of the Iowa Hill water plant. And second of all, I wonder about how much you guys talked about the quality of the water that will be generating, and will the quality of the water be great so that bottled water won't be necessary?
Yeah, so Iowa Hill, that's the sand, you're talking about our new plant?
Is the Iowa Hill,
Iowa Hill is the sand district.
Sand District? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So our new plant is, we haven't named it. We just call it the new plant right now. It's not done, so. Yeah, water quality is a big deal for us. We've actually included a lab in this iteration. Currently, we ship all our water off to be tested. We'll have a lab in-house now so they can do testing on a much more frequent basis. And we totally agree. We've talked about what's the next step. Jeffrey's been hammering this point on us about how are we going to get rid of water bottles. You know, it is just atrocious to go into City Market and see somebody walking out with packs of 50. So that's definitely, and that's something Wendy talked about with having the water stations through town. We got to try to figure out a way to provide water stations for the guests that don't freeze in the wintertime. So it's definitely something that, yeah, our water's better than the water that Hershey puts out that comes from who knows where. It
I swear
definitely
to
doesn't
God.
come from Fiji, I'll tell you that much.
I see them at City Market, you know, with like a big cart full of water, and I just want to do an intervention like I did when they were selling 3-2 beer. And I just want to say, dude, you're not going to get the buzz, and I hope you recycle that. So, but that's what we talk about that a lot. And
There is currently a ban at the state level on local communities banning plastics. And Jesse, who is our sustainability coordinator, has been fighting this at the state level. We wrote a letter. It went into committee. We were really pretty sure that it was going to come out of committee with a positive rating and be passed at the House and Senate level in the state to allow local communities to dictate their own their own path with plastics. And it was just shot down, and we don't understand why. We'd like to ban bags, but you're not allowed to. You'd like to ban bottles, but you're not allowed to. So this is definitely an ongoing discussion.
There are other
thank you.
ski towns that are doing it, so we're talking about whether we join them or not, regardless of the state.
Stick your neck out.
Eric,
We're
we're getting a
looking.
lot of questions about traffic on Ski Hill Road and the new development up there. If you guys could talk about what you can talk about.
Okay, so first of all, we
Mr. Weller.
can't really talk about this because the way our planning process works, our planning commission passes or denies a development, and then it comes to the town council where we pass or deny a development. We have called up the Peakade Hotel, so it enters a phase called the de novo hearing, beginning at the end of our next meeting, which is on the 28th. We will have the de novo hearing, and at that hearing, we will decide the fate of that hotel. We cannot talk about it. We act as impartial judges during this phase of it, so we can't really tell you anything about it. I will let you know that our engineer has asked for a new traffic study that we will most likely be seeing during that de novo hearing, so hopefully that will then answer some of those questions.
It's on the 25th now.
25th.
But irrespective of the hotel, Ski Hill Road traffic is atrocious.
Yes,
Bad weekends.
we don't disagree with that. Wendy has,
Any hotel makes it worse, but I mean, even now there is a problem.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
that hotel.
and Wendy's been sort of banging that drum for a while, even during some of this process with what's going on with some of the stuff that went on prior to, with what's actually already existing up there, so.
And if people want to tell us their opinions, you can write into the town, you can write letters to the town. It's not like we're not accepting any communication or anything, like we don't want to hear it. You can write letters to the town, and that will be delivered fairly to all of us as well as
The applicant.
The applicant.
So, thank you.
There's another question about the Housing Helps Program. Wondering if the perpetual deed restriction, even though it doesn't cap appreciation, if it will affect the resale value of the house.
Sure.
You know, the market says probably yes. You know, over time, it will overcome that, but, you know, who's to guess the real estate market? But from a practical standpoint, when we do our buy downs, we sell them cheaper. So yes, there is an associated market effect.
But the offset to that, Dick, is somebody gets cash up front.
Correct.
I'm sure they're not declaring it on their income statement, so that's really that's a real benefit.
Yeah.
So to the extent there might be a little something on the back end, you gotta take a look at that front end in terms of what you're getting that's tax-free. I'm not providing tax advice, but we know that.
Don't write that down.
You know,
Also, we considered this.
Huh?
That was televised.
We did consider this, and that is why we're encouraging people to ask for 10 to 15% of the home's value, because we believe Vail is talking, they think maybe it's 5 to 10% of the value of the house. We've talked to some realtors here who maybe say 10 to 15 is more appropriate, and so that is why we're encouraging people to seek the 10 to 15% of the house, so that hopefully there's no loss in the end to the homeowner.
It's not our intent to profit on this. It's our intent to create workforce housing in perpetuity.
Sir?
Is it a case-by-case basis, or like, even if you ask for 10 to 15%, is it possible you get 6 or 7? Or is it 10 or 15?
That's a great question. I mean,
It is on a case-by-case, based on the application. And even in extraordinary situations, we've considered more. You know, it's still new, so we're still working through, you know, where that lands. But we have 19 applications we're looking at, and we're working through them now, so,
And I don't think any of them are under 15%.
Yeah.
correct.
you know, I'll give you a real life scenario. I got a buddy of mine that just closed on a real dump, and he wants to renovate it, and he just does not have the working capital to make it livable up to his standards, or up to anyone's standards. And so he's looking at doing this, and this is gonna improve the he'll move into if he gets it, he'll move into a livable home. And for him, and I went through it over it with him, and he said, it's a small price to pay. It's immediate gratification. He can have a place, and he doesn't plan on moving. He plans on living here, raising a family, taking advantage of some of our childcare amenities that we're talking about, and just being part of the community. And with this program, he can make a home that he didn't want to live with, he and his wife, to a place that he'd like to, and he'll hopefully grow old here.
Can also get first-time buyers in as a down payment. If you find a property that interests you, and you get it under contract, you can bring that contract with your application, and you can apply the Housing Helps cash as your down payment. So it can get folks that don't have that down payment for their first home into a first home, which is really exciting.
For those of you who wonder why we would give that kind of money away, it is so significantly cheaper than building housing. So if we give somebody 80 grand, it's still a lot less than the 250 grand it usually costs us to build something to put somebody in. So it's really a great way to, at least fight part of the problem, so.
And plus, we're running out of land to build anything on. So this it gives our existing inventory a chance to convert into local workforce housing and keep our locals living here.
Another Housing Helps question. Do planners work with conventional mortgage lenders to make sure the restrictions don't prohibit them from conventional financing?
Yeah, Laurie's been working quite a bit with the lenders, the title companies, the real estate community, to make sure we're fairly seamless in that area.
Transitioning, there are a lot of questions about cars in town, obviously. So, how are we addressing the gridlock in town? How are we going to encourage more public transit use? And is there any consideration of expanding any roads or highways in town?
I mean, right now, no to the last one. That's the last thing I think any of us want to really do is expand any of the roads or highways. You know, it's all about management. Hopefully, the structure will take some of the circling paint off. We think the parking, the paid parking has been successful. I know there's been some, you know, growing pains with that and some problems on some of the residential streets in town, but we're slowly working through all of those. We are trying to do a few things. Number one, this year we've spent about $5 million on the free ride, and we moved 1.3 million people. So figure how many of those cars aren't on the road that could be with the free ride and the routes that we run that are just wildly successful. We've been talking about pushing out a program. We're starting with our staff of find a different way to get to work one day out of the week. Just one day out of the week. If you live on a bus route, or you can, you know, walk, or you can take a bike, or you can carpool, it is shocking to me sometimes when I stand at the bus stop watching how many cars drive a mile and a half with one person in them all morning long. It's really, it's amazing. And you know, it's really going to take the whole community to get a lot of traffic off the road. The problem is we live in America and people love their cars, and we're in the West and people really love their cars. And our visitors like to drive up here, and that's something we're going to have to figure a way out with the rest of the state. Some of this problem is way bigger, and it gets to the whole sustainability issue of really the number one problem we have are cars on the road as far as sustainability and climate change. That's the one thing that we probably that is probably our greatest sin is the amount of cars that come up here on the weekend and sit on that I-70 traffic or sat waiting for avalanche control today all day long, running their engines. That's a bigger problem than I think we have any real ideas to solve. But if we locally can all start taking the bus and walking, and in the summertime take the bus and ride, and you know, we can all just one day a week. That's all we ask. One day on your way to work, find a different way. You know, ride with a friend. Don't shop that day. Don't drop the kid off that day. So those are some of the things that we try to do as a council. You can only influence people so much. So, Rick?
But we're also part of the I-70 coalition, which really addresses, you know, you look at the number of people in the Denver metro area that drive up here and are, you know, a big reason that we have the gridlock that we do during our peak periods. And so we're working, and we have our assistant town manager is the chair of the Travel Demand Management Committee that's looking at how do we incentivize carpooling, how are we getting people, you know, out of their cars that are traveling up here from Denver. And that's where we got to do a lot of work. And where we're going to continue to work with the ski area to look at incentivizing parking in the new structure for carpools. So
One more piece, the PD, shout out to Jim and his crew. You know, we get a call from the ski area on what we call red flag days. When they hit a certain number, they give us a heads up, and the PD has put officers out at our key intersections to take over some of the lights into manual mode and to really ensure that our traffic is flowing. I think that's made a big difference. It's hard to really know. It's kind of subtle, but those guys are out there in the cold, and we appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
On that note, too, then, has there been the conversation moving forward, how, is it the bus staying or whatever that comes up from Denver that's bringing people, like trying to get people out of their cars and coming up that way to ski? Because Loveland's a part of it, right?
Yeah, we tried to incentivize Breck to be involved with that this year. We were actually even going to cough up half of the money that Mustang was looking for, and they didn't. Ski area didn't feel it was worthwhile, so we did. We really felt that. I think they were looking for 40 grand. We were willing to put 20 grand into it. You know,
it's not a big number.
It's not a big number of people that it moves, but it's, you know what? I think these things all change. They change the discussion. And the more people that use these kind of things and get accustomed to using the bus, accustomed to using the bus coming from Denver, I think, you know, everybody that you can get to do that. So maybe next year we can talk Breck Ski Area into doing it. And if you know anybody, tell them that you think it's a good idea. That we jointly commit to doing that. So, thank you.
And I think one of the challenges too, I think it would have to be the busting, because actually this is something that Beth Groundwater also pointed out to me, is that the pricing to rent a car versus taking the shuttle, it's very enticing to rent the car, right? So that's where it's tough too, is the pricing of the shuttle, and it's just economics. Something else about the visitors, Breckenridge Tourism Office is doing a wonderful job trying to get the word out, and a lot of the things that we're talking about, the water bottles, you don't need to drive places, here's the bus schedule. So it is getting to the visitors, it's just the habits that they come with. It's really hard to change. So it's not like we're throwing our hands in the air with the visitors, we are trying.
But you know what we can change is just shame our friends into riding the bus. You know, I mean, we can talk about the bus thing, we can talk about, you know, someone coming up here from Bug Tussle that, you know, is not acquainted with the environment. They want a vehicle because they don't realize how good our water is or how good our transportation is. But, you know, we all, like this one day a week, if we don't drive one day a week, or just kind of try to seduce your friends and yourself and your spouse into riding the bus as much as possible. It is so easy. It's just so easy, and depending on where you live, it's convenient, so.
And it works. I mean, being on council, I know our behaviors have changed, just, you know, because some of us ride bikes, some of us walk, that sort of thing. It turns into the similar to the reusable bags at the grocery store, where you start running out to your car when you forget them and running home when you forget them, which is probably terrible for traffic.
Right.
But
Don't do that.
But it does work. So if you have an issue with the traffic, look at yourself first and then point it out to your friends.
And we do talk about it all the time. It's a huge, huge deal.
Question about the BCA merger and the goals for all the arts partners and collaboration.
Yeah, you know, a year ago, we brought an outside consultant in to really take a look at all of our sort of arts programming and the arts strategy. And to make a long story short, the consultant basically concluded a couple things. One, that the utilization of our facilities could be much enhanced, and things would be a lot more effective and efficient if the different arts organizations, and we identify those as, there's 5 sort of resident arts organizations, if they didn't seem to operate so much in their own individual silos, which is really yes, there's been cooperation, but the study showed that there could be a lot more cooperation, get people out of their silos. And so to make the long story short again, toward the end of the summer, as an example, Breck Music approached BCA, 2 of the resident arts organizations, and started talking about how about if we combine our entities, we combine our operations, and we start to work even more collaboratively than we had before. So out of that, a new BCA has been formed, still using the same brand, Breck Creative Arts. A new board has been put together with representation on that board from all 5 resident arts organizations, with the strategy being that through that collective working together at a very high 30,000-foot level, that we can come up with a unified vision for arts for the town of Breckenridge. It starts, what should be the mission, the vision for the town of Breckenridge with respect to arts and culture? And then hopefully every resident arts organization that's sitting around the table can hopefully define their vision, their mission in support of, let's call it the higher mission. And also having a more unified, I'll use the word unified command structure. So start to hold individuals, start to hold organizations more accountable for accomplishing their goals, all in alignment with, I'll call it the overarching goal. So that new board was formed as of January this year. There's been one board meeting, which basically just to kind of get the wheels going. Committees have now been set up, and as we go forward, all 5 organizations will participate in terms of like calendaring, operations, what kind of things can we do together in joint ventures? Is there an ability to grab some low-hanging fruit in terms of G&A, general administrative costs, whether it be marketing or HR or purchasing or things of that nature, start taking advantage possibly of some greater buying power, getting a single professional that can actually help all 5 resident arts organizations or 4 resident arts organizations, so everybody doesn't have to have an HR person, doesn't have to have a lead marketing person. And so those wheels are now starting, and there's a lot of work to be done, but I think conceptually and philosophically, we've gotten to the point now where everybody is, I think, in the same boat, starting to row together, and hopefully we're gonna see some real good outcomes coming from that, because now we've got everybody really sitting around the table participating. That's my hope.
There's no doubt that our arts program in this town has been wildly successful through the works of just a lot of people like the Coopers, who've really pushed this thing to where we are today. This is the next phase now. And Gary's really been instrumental in trying to march this thing forward. It's not cheap for us to do a lot of the things that we do. And with a bunch of different organizations, there's definitely some waste. And Gary's really trying to drill down on that to get some little shared usage so that, things like WAVE and BIFA and, our wonderful programming from the NRO, we can enjoy all those things and maybe spend less out of the tax coffers to make those happen. But it's been amazingly successful. I mean, we are at the tops of a lot of lists of small towns with arts festivals and arts programs and, concert venues and orchestral offerings. So it's been really pretty amazing. So.
Yeah, good. I can't think of another community that's a mountain resort community that can provide theater, orchestral, popular music, film, events, festivals, and all of that. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got the makings, and other communities, quite frankly, look back to Breckenridge, and they really say, wow, you guys got all of these legs on the stool, and how have you done it? And we've kind of done it somewhat independently, the different resident arts organizations. Just imagine the power and the outcomes that can really be achieved by actually sort of closing that mass down into a much tighter, dense ball with strategy and personnel and
The dense
good
ball
leadership.
of arts.
And I'll tell you, the board members on this new board are absolutely terrific. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of human capital now on that board to support their own respective executive directors, so,
Thanks, Gary.
yeah.
We have quite a few questions, so I want to try to get through some
All
of
right.
these. But there's a question that typically always comes up, and it has to do with supermarket space in town. And
Did Aaron
the
ask that question?
council discussed. They were saying, a year ago we were talking about we need more grocery space. Obviously, it's in City Market's lap. So where are we at now with all this?
Why are you looking at me?
'Cause
Once again, this goes to there's a developer owns the store, and there's a grocery chain that runs the store, and they are not great at negotiating on either side, and that's where we are. They have different opinions about things. The owner, I think, to his credit, does not want to just give Kroger's free rein to do whatever they want, because the grocery industry is changing. They're looking to do more, housewares and things that we don't necessarily need in this community. They'd like to make it more of a sort of a supermarket, Walmart-y sort of deal, where they sell things like clothes and that kind of stuff, and the owner doesn't feel that that's what that space should go to. So they're at a bit of loggerheads right now. We're hoping that they can work through this. We did hear today at a mayors and managers meeting about how difficult it is to get a grocery store anywhere. The guys from Silverthorne were trying to attract a grocery store, and it was virtually impossible at even $10 a square foot in rent to get a grocery chain. And they talked to over 60 different vendors of groceries, and none of them wanted to come. So I think we just march along and we keep trying to help. We keep trying to help each side try to come to some conclusion, and we hope at some point they decide to take an offer that we had made of some free density to add on to the backside of the current market, and then to do a remodel, because it's
We gave all sorts of incentives.
We
so,
did.
You know, we,
Sort of old and dusty.
we rolled over like a beach ball in May for these people. And we did all we could, and it wasn't enough. Yeah, so.
And this is one of their highest producing city market stores too, so.
Unfortunately, at the same time, they've moved all of their corporate offices to Cincinnati or Cleveland. So the Denver guys are gone now, so, you know, every time the owner wants to start conversations, it's like starting it from scratch for him, so.
They moved all their carts outside, which is nice.
Yeah. So we are trying with as much as a local government can force a private company and a private owner to do anything. We do try. We've spent time, we've had meetings. Rick's really spent a lot of his time trying to force something. So sorry that we haven't got anything done, but we do try.
People are asking, at least one person's asking about our housing plans on Block 11, Denison Placer.
We're, you know, we haven't gotten there yet. We're on hold to accommodate the additional parking needed during the build of the parking structure. But I think we plan to start master planning that property within the next year or so.
We're also looking at this deal that we have with the developer out on the 4.5 acres that Dick was talking about behind McCain, or on McCain behind the water plant. If that partnership looks like it's going to work, that's the kind of thing we'd like to do going forward. You know, in the past, we've built some of this stuff ourselves, but really that's not the business that we should be in. We should be finding developers to help us do this, and hopefully with Gorman coming in, we can do that on the next phases of Block 11 once the parking structure's done and we're moving on.
Very favorable financing in the works there. So like Eric said, if it's successful, that may be a model that we carry down to.
But we also want to keep in mind that we try to possibly create some mixed use, so it's just not all
High
housing,
density.
housing, one project after another as you're coming into town, to try to vary it in terms of, you know, the architectural style. And we know that Airport Road is getting a lot more crowded. There's more residential going out there, there's more businesses going out there, and I think we'd like to complement what's going on now with what we may be doing as well going forward, and not just, like you say, it's just strictly 100% housing.
And do we need some more Wellington-style, small, single-family homes? Because we know how popular those are, and there's not a lot of those, you know. The minute one comes open, it's gone immediately.
We're very cognizant also what the impact of having more people living here year-round does to the community. I mean, housing's a big deal. We want everybody to live here that works here, but we also know that every one of those people means more childcare. It means more money for the school district. It means, I mean, it's just this continuous mass that we create that just, you know, everything we do, we add to the stuff that we don't necessarily love, and then we have to fund that. So it's an ongoing discussion about how much do you shove into this valley? And, you know, at what point do we say that's all we can really, you know, that's the end? And we have that discussion on almost a daily basis with this crew is, you know, what are we doing? What are we doing? Because livability, since we all live here, livability is really important to this group. You know, being able to get on the trails, being able to go skiing, being able to do the things that we love. We know that the tax base is what gives us a lot of those things. It gives you the ability to spend $17 million adding on to the rec center. But on the other hand, it also means traffic's terrible. And going to the grocery store at 4 in the afternoon is something that if you're doing it, I don't know what you're thinking. So, you know, there's this yin and yang in this community that we constantly argue about and agree about and disagree about. So we do think about all these things. Beth?
Yeah, related to things that you mentioned, growing population, forest health, and risks to the community. Besides the dam breaking and water flowing through the community, I think we have a very, very high risk of a wildfire causing an evacuation of all or a large fraction of the town in the next 5 to 10 years. I think that's going to happen. So I'm asking, do we have a robust, up-to-date evacuation plan? And do we have any plans to practice that evacuation in order to find out where are things going to go wrong, where are
Rick? Yes, we do.
Yeah, we have critical incident plan. Obviously, there's only a couple ways in and out, right? And so, I mean, for years, we work countywide, and, you know, every year there's some sort of a critical incident training, and a lot of them involve around wildfires in different areas, which involve, you know, evacuations, doing mock evacuations, and how you would set that stuff up. And so we've talked through those. We do tabletop exercises in addition to those.
I'd like to see us do an actual, get local homeowners, et cetera, involved in.
Yeah, well, we haven't probably.
See if it works.
Hopefully, we'll never have to see if it works. But you know, the things you can do is clear the slash out of your yards and put them out for the chipping program. And those things all make an impact. We have a great fire department. They'll come to your house. They'll help you with a plan around your house for defensible space. They do it for free. You know, there's a lot of things you can just do in your own property to help the whole be safer. We did try to do a mandatory defensible space from the council at one point and just got yelled at big time. So we did it and then we took it back. But you know, those things are important, and if everybody does it, the Highlands has done an amazing job of cleaning up their neighborhood. And with things like Jeffrey was talking to that are going on to Wellington this year, you know, we got federal dollars to clean up a lot of the dead. You know, hopefully we can march down this road and fire stays away from what they call the urban interface.
And you know, we had a report from the Forest Service and our open space, like 80% of fires are human caused. And we also funded a couple heightened enforcement as far as Forest Service and cops to go around and make sure check on campfires and whatnot. So there again, this is another thing. If you see something, say something. When you're hiking, when you're out, if you see a bad behavior, knock them out. Call the cops. Get people up there to, you know, if you see kind of illegal camping and it's something that we all have to take an active role in, because there again, it's mostly human caused, and lightning is some of it, but I think 80% is what he said.
86%.
86%, yeah.
So, reference the county's interest in raising minimum wage. What's the town's position relative to this, especially given the various subsidies that we already provide?
Dick?
We haven't voted, so we don't have an official opinion, but I think our straw poll, the current legislature that passed, that empowers local communities to set minimum wage, our feeling, I think the council's feeling is it's flawed in a few ways. One of the major ways, we have a lot of, well, we have a lot of restaurants, 2 restaurateurs up here. We have a lot of workforce in the hospitality industry that take advantage of the tip credit. A lot of people don't understand this piece, but I think it has been recognized, I think, countywide and really statewide as one of the broken pieces of the minimum wage legislature that gave local power. So there's lobbying efforts. I actually was at the state capitol yesterday in a stakeholders meeting. Thomas Davidson was down there and was with some of our state representatives. And there's a movement towards fixing some of these issues. And I think if that happens, and there's a high confidence level that will, then I think we'll have a whole different discussion. I think the county, I think Thomas and Karn are pretty set in trying to get this done at some point. Hopefully they're being patient to see what happens in this session of the legislature down in Denver. So maybe I'm talking around it a bit, but I think there's steps involved. I wouldn't say this group's opposed. I think some things need to happen before we would jump on that bandwagon.
But I think the important thing to know is that we will continue talking about this issue, and we know that it makes a difference in people's lives. So although, there are things that could be better, certainly, in the legislation right now. It's a conversation that, as a council, we'll be talking about a lot over the next year, especially, and
You bet.
hopefully gathering data and more information, and just to have a lot better understanding of what that would mean to people who work here, and owners, and employees and families.
And it won't change what we do as subsidies for the community, because we know that if you make $15 an hour, you're not buying a house in Breckenridge. I mean, I think we can all agree on that. So the things that we do for childcare, the things that we do for housing, the things that we do for transportation, we're going to continue to do no matter what happens with the minimum wage discussion. So we think those are important things that we do as a community. They're important things that a lot of business owners already do. There's things that the ski area does for their employees that, we want to make sure that if the minimum wage does get raised, those things don't go away, because those are important to the fabric of what goes on here.
And I think part of the issue, I mean, I support a higher minimum wage, but personally, but I think part of the issue to this group was we had to make a decision pretty quickly without a lot of information. I mean, we couldn't even have the answer of, well, how many people are making minimum wage?
Yeah.
Which, that's not how we make decisions here. We can't do it on gut, we can't do it on feelings, we have to do it on data, and how many people would be affected. Is $15 the right amount, or what is the right amount? So, and how does that affect the rest of the community?
Yeah, Aaron's right, we don't have great data on wage data, so.
But we're working
Nothing
on
could
it.
take
So,
effect
we'd like to
until
get it.
2021.
Yeah, it's 2021, so we got some time. We'll take one more.
Which one? Does anybody have one out here while we're looking? Oh, look at that.
Oh, everybody does. Who hasn't asked? Ma'am?
I was curious when we were talking about the new parking and the new cars coming into town, and the buses and how all that works together. There's been several times when you see the buses stuck in the gridlock as well. Is there an opportunity in this study to look at maybe a zipper or emergency or bus lane on busy days or something, so that you actually have an advantage to ride the bus? I usually sell tickets one day a week, and so even just like sometimes getting from the gondola lot to work, like even that early, sometimes the bus is running late enough where I would be late.
Yeah.
It's not always as reliable unless we're potentially really changing some.
Yeah, unfortunately, without doing a major expansion of the roadways that, honestly, we don't really have the money to do, and a lot of it is state highway, that's just not in the cards currently. I mean, we wish it was. If we had a bus lane, that would be awesome. It's one of those things that we talk about trying to run it through property, this and that, but James at Public Works does a lot of work trying to make sure that the routes, only touch Main Street for as long as they really need to, and, there's a lot of thought that goes in from his team trying to make sure that the routes only run behind a couple of days out of the year, and it's a constant battle for him. We've even talked about not having the gondola be a central hub all the time, but having some satellite hubs, but that's difficult also. So anyway, the short answer is no. All right, that's sort of the end of our scheduled time. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight, taking time out of your lives to hear what we're doing. This is a wonderful group of people up here that spends a lot of hard work, and they're always available for questions. All of us are, walk around town. Feel free at any point to grab us, and if you got something that's bugging you that you don't want to talk about in public, you can find us. So thank you very much.